Hevra, what an incredibly strange year this has been. Much has already been said and written about this pandemic. There were many lessons gleaned and, unfortunately, tons of heartbreak and angst, and, fortunately, some silver linings as well. Probably if we were each going to give a first sermon about a different aspect or lesson, a first sermon upon coming back together, we might each speak about a different aspect or lesson from this pandemic. In fact, you might think about what sermon you would give. What lesson, above all else, stands out in your mind? I knew immediately what I wanted to speak about. You see, what I missed most this past year was you and people in general. It feels like we have been almost hermetically sealed off from each other this past year. And in the absence of normal human connection, I saw how very important acts of kindness truly are. And that is what I would like to focus on tonight. So imagine giving a sermon to an empty sanctuary, as Rabbi Linder and I have repeatedly over this past year. It is so weird. And stranger yet was hearing no comments about it after, because there was no oneg or gathering of people. So you're left to wonder, did anyone take it in? Did they like it? Did they hate it? Did they have a comment? Who knows? But then someone would reach out with an email to let me know that I was heard and that they gained something from my words. And that was so incredibly affirming. Usually it was just one or two people, but that simple communication made such a difference to my spirit. Or I would get a private chat from someone after I offered a Devar Torah at a board meeting or taught a lunch and learn. And the person would say, "Hey, that was great," or "Thanks for those words." And I was reminded how gratifying those comments can be. I realized how much my soul is nurtured by another person's caring remarks or actions. In this year of isolation, I saw other people light up too from the kindness of friendly encounters. We would be on Zoom about to have a class together or a Shabbat service. And you know, we'd all be in those tiny little squares. And one person would forget about everyone else who was on Zoom, except his or her friend across the Zoom screen. You know what I'm talking about. And the person would say, "Hi, Shirley, how have you been?" And Shirley would be so thrilled for the kind inquiry and connection to another person. Or we would be in the middle of Torah study, and one member would take a friendly jab at another member's comment, and that friendship would be strengthened in that moment. As I look back on my life, through that photo album of memories that I have in my brain, as we all do, I see how often a kind act or a word brought sweet color and deep joy into my life. I think of handmade greeting cards from my children, a congregation which always sent flowers to the rabbis' homes before the high holy days, a woman in a congregation who greeted people at the Shabbat onegs with such sweet, sincere phrases like, "Honey, it is so good to see you." I remember meals brought to me when I was recovering from surgery. And I also, of course, think of times when I was the one reaching out with calls and visits to congregants and friends in their time of need. As I think back on all of these occurrences, I realize that one of the amazing things about kindness is that it usually does not cost much in time or in money or in energy. Truly, all of us can do it. And we all can then be part of this strong impact. And this seems the perfect time to say that I am so, so grateful to all of you who have reached out to welcome me. Thank you for helping me feel your presence, though I couldn't see you, and for feeling the warmth of this congregation in the midst of a pandemic. It has meant a great deal to me. I have felt so blessed by your kindness, and I am so glad that we are beginning to build connections with each other. I look forward to this year, to hopefully many, many more times in person. So what I have come to learn both personally and professionally is that kindness is powerful. It provides a glue between people, and it offers very real, needed support to each of us. When I think about what I have learned professionally, I am reminded of lessons for marital counseling, for example. How kind words between spouses can build that relationship and help it weather tough times. Marriages need positivity to grow, as do all human relationships. And I think, too, of lessons from our own Reform Jewish movement. Rabbi Rick Jacobs, who is president of our Union for Reform Judaism, considers kindness so important to the essence of creating modern Jewish communities that he set as his premier initiative the call for Reform congregations to engage in what he terms audacious hospitality. By this, he means that temples need to be warm and welcoming to everyone. Why? Because we all desire a religious community where we can feel at home and nurtured. In our overly materialistic, transactional world, our souls are eager for authentic support and warmth, and the temple should be a place that embodies those values. There is so much that could be said about Judaism's lessons about chesed, about kindness. I'm just going to say a little. First, the exemplar par excellence for this value in Judaism is actually God. We are taught, for example, that Torah is a gift of great kindness from God. It is, after all, the tree of life for our community. And through it, we learn the values, the holidays, and the stories that help make our lives meaningful and good. So we acknowledge God's kind gift in our daily prayers, as we did tonight, when we say, Ahavat olam beit Yisrael amcha ahavta, Torah otanu limadata. Everlasting love, God, you gave us by teaching us Torah. And of course, zooming out from the Jewish people, this whole universe and life itself are incredible gifts of generosity and kindness from God. Many places in the Psalms, for example, we see a fervent appreciation for God's gifts to us. In Psalm 89, the psalmist relishes God's gift of the world. The psalmist says, I will sing of the Lord's steadfast love forever. And then he says, Olam chesed yibaneh, the world is built on kindness. In Judaism, we can go all the way back to our first patriarch and matriarch, to Abraham and Sarah, to find human exemplars of chesed. We learn from them when they opened their home with great fanfare to 3 wanderers and provide them with a sumptuous meal. The stories are many in the Bible and in rabbinic tradition of the importance of kindness. But one of my favorite teachings is the one from the rabbinic tradition that says, a visit to someone who is ill takes away 1/60th of their illness. Now, I don't know if the math is exactly correct, but the concept sure is. The rabbis knew already long ago how helpful such a visit can be. In the 1990s, so even before the pandemic, Dr. Mary Pfeiffer wrote a book called The Shelter of Each Other. It is well worth reading. In it, she speaks of the challenges of the modern age. She notes, life is increasingly unstable, inconsistent, and hectic. She speaks of the need we all have for true, caring community. Dr. Pfeiffer asserts, the challenge now in this modern world is to connect, to repair, to bring people back together. And she mentioned specifically Martin Buber, who argued that life is rich in proportion to the number of truly caring I-thou relationships that a person has. Relationships where we treat each other as made in God's image. By the way, the Jewish community is blessed by the fact that after 3,500 years of being a community, we know a thing or two about community. In the most recent Pew study on American Judaism, a significant percentage of Jews said they weren't so sure about their theological beliefs, but they continued to greatly value the Jewish community. Building community starts with care and kindness. So as we now rebuild our communities, as we come back together after 16 months apart, as we come back as a Jewish community, as neighborhoods, as extended families, as friendship groups, my hope is that we will prioritize kindness. May we take the time to inquire of someone's well-being, to build friendships, to offer a friendly word to a newcomer at our temple, to bring a meal to someone who is ill. All of these actions provide truly needed support and connection. As the psalmist taught, Olam chesed yibaneh, these acts of kindness do indeed build our world.